these results in the world, and I'd go, I didn't mean it. Just had one yesterday with my boyfriend, and he called me on it, and I could see what was communicating behind, even though what I was saying was very benign, there was some place I was coming from that was getting translated. So I just want to, stay with that. And here I want to go to a slide Reverend Ray had yesterday. Yesterday, feels like yesterday, but last week, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And I'm going to add to that, I can't believe what you say because I see what you do and what you don't do. And that's going to be very important in this time and space as we deal with the unrest that is occurring. There's a lot of us not doing, and it's telling the world something, okay? So as I thought about doing, I thought about the 7 habits of highly effective people. It was, Stephen Covey proposed these quadrants from which we do, like the urgent, not important. So when I thought about doing, I thought about this spectrum of doing that we could characterize through this kind of 7 habits of highly effective people. So you can be anywhere on the spectrum from doing the most, doing a whole lot, having a lot on your plate, being really busy, right? Maybe you're doing things in quadrant 4. Where they're important, but they're not urgent, or you're doing things that are crisis driven, or you're doing a lot of prep work. You could be doing a lot of things where you're avoiding, right? So these are places you can situate your doing just on the surface. So with this framework, it gives us a place to come say, well, am I doing things that are urgent and not important? Am I doing things that are urgent and important, right? So you can kind of, some of you are familiar with this model of really characterizing your doing. And although I believe that this is a very solid approach to this notion of effective, the question, I always go behind the scenes and I say, well, effective at what? When you say 7 habits of highly effective people, what in fact are you trying to be effective at is where I'm coming from. Because you can be highly effective at something that doesn't speak to your true calling. You can be highly effective at things that really are helping you avoid the things that you know you need to do at a spiritual and a deeper level. So you can then backdoor yourself and say, well, I'm highly effective. I'm doing those things in quadrant 2. Everybody talks about quadrant 2 work, right? I'm in quadrant 2. I'm preparing, I'm planning, I'm exercising, I'm relationship building, right? I'm doing those things that seem to be the qualities of personal leadership. But as I've unpacked these quadrants, I said to myself, there are some limitations of this framework. The first one I saw was this idea of effectiveness rests simply on the actions that you're taking from your own notion about who you are and what you're up to. So they're very driven by your conscious knowing about what you're up to. These habits also are grounded in your own limited view or your own agenda. So see, you have an agenda when you're out here being effective, right? Right. So you know you're on the agenda and you're going to effectively get your agenda accomplished. They also stem from what Michael Beckwith calls the by me quadrant of spiritual growth. So Michael Beckwith, for those of you who know, proposes these 4 levels of consciousness. The first one is to me, victim consciousness, and then by me is manifestor consciousness. Through me is channel consciousness, where 4 is being consciousness, right? So even if you think about it on these levels of spiritual consciousness, by me is only a level 2. So when you talk about habits of effectiveness, they generally rise out of a level 2 consciousness. Follow me? Okay. Now, I'm not saying things wrong, so I don't want anybody to hear I am trying to dismiss the quadrants, But I would tell you that there are two higher places to come from in your actions and being effective that are not considered if you're simply talking about the 7 habits or any other framework. Most of the frameworks of action live at level 2. Okay. And then the last one, another limitation is, well, where does action come from? What does effectiveness look like when you're at level 3 and level 4 consciousness? How do you then measure if you're being effective? So I'm going to go back to these highly effective quadrants. Somebody said something's a time waster, right? You could say time waster. Well, how do we know it's a time waster when we're at a 3 or 4? What might look like as a time waster when we're in the doing or the level 2 by me consciousness might actually be what forwards something in the 4 level. So even when you start to judge actions by their particular flavor in the world, you're losing sight of the spiritual consciousness that gave rise to that action. So something that can look like a time waster might actually be the very thing that moves something that you don't even see. Get me? I want to sit with that. It's a lot I'm saying here, right? So and then the question is, what does this mean for our intention? And I talked about the intention scale because it's my belief that the level of consciousness gives rise to the goals you set, which then gives rise to the intention level you experience. Because we talked about you don't have an intention, you are an intention, and that intention is given by the goals you set. So if you are at a level 2, you're setting certain types of goals that give you certain intentions. When you are at level 3 and level 4, you're at a higher level of even setting goals. You're not trying to accomplish anything really, right? You are being who you are and things are getting accomplished through you. It's a very different place to come from in action. Okay, so that's where I'm going. So again, there's been a lot of work about the law of attraction and making things happen and setting a vision, and you know how to do that. But what if that was just a level 2? What if that wasn't the whole picture? Maybe there's something you need to let go of and allow something through you to even set the goal, right? Maybe there's this, all of this may be fruitful when you think of it in these higher perspectives. So that had me ask myself some questions, which I always do. The professor and me say, okay, well, Roni, given all that, what goal are we pursuing as we take actions in our lives? Who are we being when we set the goal in the first place? What is going on when we don't know what to do, right? Because I've heard a lot of that, particularly around I'm working with some companies who are trying to do some diversity things, and they say to me, Roni, we don't know what to do. You're the consultant. Tell us what to do. And I have an answer to that later. How are we measuring being effective or effectiveness? Is all the busyness we doing really getting the result? Okay. And then another one is, how are we determining the things we have to do? So again, this is me. I started to ask myself these questions. And I give you this quote by Brother Beckwith, who is at the source of this particular framework around levels of consciousness. When you truly have an insight or spiritual awakening, the step is always action. When the awakening occurs, the next step will move you powerfully into action. It's not a figuring out the action. It is something that compels you, not craves you. Difference from cravings and compelling. You're inspired for action. You're not just taking action because you figured out what to do. You get the difference? You see, it's coming from a different place. So this is my stand. I'm going to put myself with Dr. Beckwith, right? I gave my own version. It is not what you do. It is from where you are doing the doing that matters. The energy from which you act is what creates the results you experience in your life and as your life. I'm going to repeat that. It is not what you do. It is from where you are doing the doing that matters. The energy from which you act is what creates the results you experience as your life. So I used to believe that my doing was actually creating the result. That's why I was treating and moving my feet, because I thought the moving of my feet was what was making the result. Now, it was a part of the equation, because when you are compelled through a spiritual awakening to act, that action carries with it the inspiration that you're acting from. That's why it works, not because I did something. And I hope y'all are hearing it. Because there are times, if you look at people like the Dalai Lama, who do very little and accomplish a lot. Because the energy and the where he's coming from is an energy of love. When you think about the Jesus the Christ in the Bible, and you think about, I think Jesus, most of it was him in the wilderness speaking to God, I think. I mean, there were some things he did, but if you look at the bulk of the doing, it might have rested in that quadrant called not important and whatever. I forgot the quadrant already, but you get what I'm saying. Looking on the outside, it could have looked like, what is Jesus out here doing? He looked lazy, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that things didn't get done through him, but the place he was coming from was what was giving the result. And then I further went back to the intention scale, because remember I said you are an intention, you don't have an intention. And even as you think about the goal you set, remember I said last week or 2 weeks ago, it's the goal, right? So first you got to be clear about the goal, and then your experience and energetic as related to the goal, where the consciousness is what gives rise to what goals even matter to you. So you can't even measure your intention until you have a goal. But then when you have a goal, the question is, where is this goal coming from? So I may have, and then I'm going to use an example. I'm going to bring this all together in an example that is germane to what we're dealing with now, where we're having a social, political, and moral uprising in this country. People who have been asleep to this notion of racism are now being awakened to a reality that is jarring, just like how you wake up out of a sleep and it's jarring and you're like fumbling and you don't know what to do. This is a time for you to really start to consider, where are you acting from? Don't just start doing stuff. Consider, one, what's your goal? And where's that goal coming from? And then what your intention is, and then acting in consistency with that. So through faith, tie your mind back to the mind of God. And in action, live as though you are guided by a supreme intelligence. And this is Ernest Holmes. So when I sat with that, I'm going to go here. So when I sat with that, so I'm going to keep going back. So this is what our man Ernest says. Through faith, tie your mind back to the mind of God, and in action, live as though you were guided by supreme intelligence. So I'm going to go forward. Okay. So here's the question. If you find yourself being awakened by the events that are occurring, you see a need, you see that things are unfair, unjust, and your heart is really in a space of, what do I need to do? I'm going to share a story that helps you kind of get at how to figure out what is yours to do, not what you need to do or should do, but what is yours to do from an authentic place of divine intelligence and your unique expression of that intelligence. So let me share a story. So I shared a little bit earlier that I've been working with companies and organizations inside of this kind of, I'm gonna call it the new reality. And as a Black woman, I don't find this a new reality, but I empathize. Everybody is where they is. But for some people in some organizations, they see that things are unfair now and they want to do something. And then they call and hire my company to go in and do some work to guide some conversations. Well, I'm in such conversation now with a few organizations. And what the predominant sentiment is, we don't know what to do. Tell us what to do. I don't know what to do. We just know we got to react, respond, whatever. And then I go back to the intention scale and I say, well, what's your goal? And when we really have this conversation, the truth gets revealed, because usually the goal is that we don't want to look bad as a company in light of what's happening. So we got to hire you to tell us something for us to look good. Now, nobody's going to say that out loud. But if you look at the ways in which it's being framed and where it's coming from, if you tell the truth, that's really what they're saying. We don't want to look bad. We want to make sure our African American and people of color folks that buy our products or engage in our organization don't get turned off because we doing nothing. And I'm gonna ask you, where's that resonating when you think about the intention level? What's that? Somewhere -3, struggling, resistant. At best is settling. Now think about how much you're going to actually get done coming from a place of settling with a goal called, I just don't want to look bad because, you know, blah, 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 right? So the goal ain't really about true inclusion and diversity. It's about not looking bad because we got to be doing something. And then even with that, there's at a -2 because they're really not even telling the truth that that's the issue. Because at least if they told that truth, we could actually move you upward. But when you deny, there's very little space to actually take action that's going to make a difference. Because remember I said, it's not what you do, it's where you're doing it from that gets the result. Y'all still with me? I see Frank nodding. I can't see everybody because I'm on a limited view. But I just want y'all to sit with this. So when we talk about mindful action, right? The question is, what mind is really acting? And being willing at the deepest level with all your goodness and all the goodness you think you are. Because we all think we good people. These companies don't think they're bad people. Nobody is coming to be wrong or bad. But if they told the truth that this action they're about to take to embody diversity in their organization is really coming from a place of avoiding looking crazy or looking bad or looking good, whatever, then we can at least have a conversation about how to transform that. And to then create a goal that really is aligned with the organization's mission and vision. And the same is with us. A lot of times we're taking action even in our own space. And I don't know if Robin will let me share this, but she was so transparent in our study group. And she was like, you know, I knew what wasn't mine to do. And she's still doing the spiritual work to create what's hers to do. But I respected her for saying, you know, me marching may not be it, or me doing this. She was thoughtful about where am I coming from when I act. I know I want to contribute to the cause. I know my heart is yearning to make a difference, but I'm going to do the work up front to really get at where I'm going to be coming from before I just jump into protest. And I'm not mad at the protest. That's, for some people, that might be their authentic expression. But for some of us, it may be working with someone in our neighborhood. It may be just talking to a neighbor that we've acted like we liked and was including, and we didn't. See, I don't know what the action is, but I do know this. When you get straight about where you're coming from, the action will emerge. That's what Michael Beckwith said. Divine intelligence will show you how to act. You will be compelled to act in consistency with where you're coming from. That's what mindful action is all about. It's not about trying to look good or trying to do what's popular or even do what we in our egoic mind think we should be doing. Because that's what everybody else is doing. It's about being in the mind of God as a unique expression of you and getting in touch with that, and then so being compelled and inspired to make a difference in the world through the actions you take. That, my friend, will get a result. See, because if you don't do it that way, what you will pretend is that when it doesn't turn out, you just didn't do the right thing. Okay? And also, as I thought about when people say, I don't know what to do, because again, Michael told us that when you are in divine mind, action is right the next step. So if you are in divine mind and you don't know what to do, here are some ways that insidiously your egoic mind has slipped in there, right? So usually when you don't know what to do, this means being paralyzed by fear and an unwillingness to try, fail, or be uncomfortable. That's what really you want to say. Now, again, people are not straight about that. They'll say, I don't know what to do, as a mask for the paralysis of fear, the unwillingness to fail, and the unwillingness to be uncomfortable. All right. Now, if you told the truth about that, we actually might can get somewhere and address the fear that is paralyzing you. But as long as you're pretending you don't know what to do, then we can't even deal with the fear. Next one, depending on your your level of willingness or your intention, you will move through this fear and take some action consistent with the goal you say you want. I was talking to my business partner who I adore, and I was asking her about this because she wrote the Being is the New Doing book, so I refer to her. I was like, well, how would you respond to this? And she said, we do things we don't know how to do all the time, but we're willing to do it because we have a commitment and a goal that matters. So for example, many of us didn't know how to get a degree until we signed on to, go to school. We didn't know how to do that. We didn't know what to do, but we knew we had to apply, get accepted, and take classes. And we were willing to do that because it was a goal that really mattered. So take the case when you say you don't know what to do, the goal just don't matter enough to you to really deal with the discomfort, deal with the fear, and move. We do a whole lot we don't know how to do. But when it really is on that low level of intention, you indifferent or you resisting or you avoiding, you just go, okay, I don't know what to do. Okay? And is this speaking to anybody but me? Because this spoke to me as I was writing it. Because there are places in my life, I don't say this as an authority. I say this as a vessel that knows this life, where I'm pretending that I want things and then I really don't. And then I'm coming from a place of arrogance, or I'm coming from a place of gotten to figure it out when, again, Michael said, when you are in divine intelligence, you don't have to figure it out. Ain't nothing to figure out. So that's, to me, what mindful action is all about, is getting in touch with who you are. What are you up to? What game are you really playing in this life? Where are you coming from in terms of your consciousness and intention? And then aligning your actions to that. And then allowing yourself to free yourself from whatever fear shows up. I'm not saying fear won't show up, and I'm not going to promise you won't be uncomfortable. Michael didn't say comfortable action steps would come. He just said what? The next step will come. He didn't say it's going to be convenient and comfortable and you're going to always feel good about it. I'm not saying inspiration don't necessarily mean you feel good, because your ego might have an opinion, but the part of you that's trying to emerge will guide you to the next action. You just have to allow it. Okay? So y'all know me. I like to have steps. Like, for those people who want to know how, here's some steps, right? So anytime you're about to act, take a moment. I mean, wash dishes. I mean, even things you feel are mundane. And I'm not saying you can do it, all the time, but the more times you do this process with anything you do, the more mindfulness you bring to the action. So even if it's my goal, like when I'm about to act and wash dishes, get present to your inner world. So I use wash dishes because I'm gonna use something deep like Black Lives Matter. Now I'm gonna use something simple like washing dishes. So I would, the step is you ready to wash dishes. Go inside. What goal do I have in this interaction between me and the dishes? Now, usually I'm just saying me, I don't like washing dishes. And my inner world says I got to wash these dishes, which isn't true. I ain't never got to wash a dish a day in my life. Right? I don't got to put nothing in the dishwasher. I ain't got to do nothing. As the Course in Miracles say, you need do nothing. Now, I'm choosing to wash dishes because the goal, when I really think about it, is I like to have an organized and beautiful kitchen. And part of that goal is washing dishes. But if I go into my inner world and I got a whole lot of resistance about I got to wash dishes, my experience in that moment is somehow I'm a victim of the dishes. Now, I got to be willing to let that go and say, okay, my goal really is beautifying my kitchen, and washing dishes is an access to that. And then I can choose. All right. Take the action that's consistent with the goal. I might decide, well, I don't want to wash dishes. Maybe I'll hire somebody to wash all my dishes, and that'll get it done. See, I don't got to do nothing. But when I get in touch with the goal, I may be inspired to do another action called, well, maybe I can turn on the music and wash dishes and sit and have my daughter come down and we have a moment of joining. See, I can create all kinds of actions when I'm clear what the goal is. And I'm clear my inner state. And if my inner state is not what I want it to be, I get to say, because I need do nothing. All this conversation about what you got to do is a lie. It's your ego trying to be a victim to something it's choosing to do in the moment. So when I get clear about the goal, I have many actions and then go through, and I call it OS actions. I may have to I may be compelled to do an action that I never thought of before. That what we call OS actions, oh shit actions. They might be something like, oh shit, I didn't think of that. Right? So the action I thought I was going to do, washing dishes, when I got into the real goal of beautifying my home, I could then take an OS action call. Let me create another way to do that fulfills me. Get a person, get with my daughter, play music. Right? So these are things, again, when you're in the goal and notice you're energetic, you can then act and take actions that are not BS actions, which I'm not going to say that on these with you nice church folks, but y'all get the message. You can do BS actions or OS actions, those actions that stretch you or those actions that just have you be in your BS state, just doing unconsciously. And then as I'm doing the action, I can give thanks. I'm grateful for this divine intelligence guiding me to a more fruitful action that really is aligned with the goal that I set. And then repeat. I saw a hand up. I don't know what that means in this, Frank. I'm talking. Usually when I'm in class, we do that, but I'm going to let y'all sit with this. I'm talking, so I would love to answer questions because the teacher in me always wants to answer questions, but I'm going to finish up here. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, and I wanted to even take out mine because it ain't yours. It's the vision that you were born to express. It's really God's vision through you. When you use the word my, it makes it possessive. And when you use the word my, as Michael Beck would say all the time, you're really in an egoic perception. And moving from 2 to 3 level of consciousness requires you to give up my, me, and mine. So I've left it there because that's how she said it, but it really is the vision that is trying to move through you. Then it makes no difference whether I am afraid or not. And that I should be the little I. Right? It should, and that's how I would say it. Me and Audrey got to talk. I'd say, one is not your vision, and whether I is the small I am afraid, because the big I is never afraid. The big I that you are is never afraid. Right? The little I can get afraid on the smallest thing, but the big I knows exactly why you're here, and it has the answer, but you got to be in touch with that, and you got to relinquish the little I for the big I. So your call to action this week, my loves, is declare who you are and what you up to, and notice whether or not your actions are aligned. Before you start going out there doing stuff, you start to see, well, who are you in the matter? When you think about Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, Gay Lives Matter, whatever your spiritual, your socio-political actions are going to be, think about who are you and what are you really up to? And tell the truth. Don't make yourself wrong if it's, I just want to save face. That's honest. But then we can elevate the goal to say, okay, assume I don't need to save face. What would I then do? But you can't start and not tell that truth. You got to be honest. You got to be truthful. And then check your intention. If that's my goal, then get a goal and say, okay, am I really aligned with that? Then use the steps that I'm proposing in this talk to take mindful action. Okay. And then the last thing is I'm going to invite all of us this week to up-level your spiritual practices and record your experiences. So if you're meditating, up-level it. I don't mean just add more time to it. See, people think up-leveling is more. No, I use the word up-level on purpose. Because if you're doing more of the same, it's not up-leveling. Up-level means bring more of you to it. Like Jesus said, I came so that you can have life and have it more abundantly. So I want you to be more abundant in your approach to your spiritual practices this week. I want you to be more abundant as you interact with your partners and mates and friends. because that's a spiritual practice. I want you to up level just a little. I ain't saying you know, if you at 4, let's go to 5, 4.5. Bring more of you to your spiritual practice. It might mean that you do them less time. All right? And then record your experience this week. So that's what I invite you to do this week. So I said a lot. I know that it has resonated. You took the parts that you needed. And I know that it landed because it wasn't as me writing, it was God through me, speaking to the God in you. As you take action, be mindful and know which mind you're coming from as you take those actions, because that divine mind always knows what's yours to do. There's no confusion in that. Trust me, I believe you're never confused. You're just unwilling. You may be fearful. You may be telling a lie. You may be on top of a lie trying to pretend, right? But you're never at the core unconfused or don't know. So let's just affirm this together, and then I'm finished. Every action I take emerges from knowing my oneness with all and serve the highest good. And you can just do that in your seat. Every action I take emerges from knowing my oneness with all and serves the highest good. And so it is.